Brother Gregory and I had some discussions about reintroducing the altars to church worship. So I began to think about the configuration of the tabernacle in the wilderness, and there were two altars there, the altar of sacrifice and the altar of incense. And as I began to think about how the furniture and the space was arranged in the tabernacle, I thought about that you encounter first the altar of sacrifice as you come in. And the last thing you come to, and it's part of a larger lesson on the symbolism of all the fixtures of the tabernacle, but the last thing you came to was the most holy place, the Holy of Holies. And so I just sent him a note. I didn't know it was going to become a reading. It's really not written to read, but I'm going to rephrase it a little bit as I go. He asked me to read it. I'm talking about as we approach the tabernacle. First, we encounter the altar of merciless sacrifice with the dispassionate crucifixion of self. It's the place for the burnt offering, the Holocaust, the utter destruction of self, our identity, our very life and soul, trusting that the resulting empty vessel is washed clean by the crimson blood of his own sacrifice, yes, and is subsequently filled with a new life born of above. Eventually we proceed to the most holy place, knowing that there resides the ark of his presence. It contains the evidence of our own unrighteousness, the tablet of the unkept law of God, the rod of a failed priesthood bearing the bitter fruit of rebellion, and the rejected bread from heaven. Yet upon this very vessel of testimony against us is the seat of mercy, where our guilt is sealed away, unseen and forgotten by God. We emerge a new creation, justified before an otherwise unapproachable holy judge. The altar is, at once, a fearful and a precious place where we both lose and find our lives.
Amen.
Praise God.
Sonja, take it away.
It's an honor to be with y'all tonight to do this. It's a little out of the blue. I may need a marker board and a podium probably over here. While I'm talking, I'm just going to start passing some things out, or get somebody to help me pass some of these things out. I want everyone to have a pen, look on top, and some. Everyone gets one of each.
One each.
Oh,
Thank you.
just the cards and the
Couple of
several. Yeah, like about 15 or so.
All right.
Good. Can y'all hear me okay? Everybody hear me okay?
Can you hear okay?
Okay. So we're talking about prayer, and how many of you have been in church for a while?
All my life.
Yeah? Everyone's been in church for a while?
No.
Okay.
There you
A
go.
few of you have not, but for those of you who have, we need to get back to some of the basics. So I'm going to ask you a question. What is prayer? Just, what is prayer?
Communication with God.
Thank you.
Communication. Why is it what we do with other people considered prayer? What is it unique about communication with God that is termed prayer?
Personalized one-on-one.
Well, we have personalized relationship and personalized one-on-one with our friends,
No.
with our spouse. What is it unique about our communication with God that we have a whole another term that designates what that is. Now think about it for just a minute. What is prayer? It is communication. Absolutely. It is communication. But it carries so much more than just communication. There is a whole nother dimension to prayer than just communication. But prayer can also be warfare. It can be intercession. It can be supplication. It can be petitionary. It can be, yes, a dialogue of things that are going on in your life. But prayer is more than just communication, because we communicate with the TV repairman, you know. But there is a relational aspect about prayer that is unique, and that's why it's termed prayer. It is for God and God alone. It's a unique communication with God. So we're going to talk about some things about prayer. When you think about prayer, what does prayer flow out of?
The heart.
The heart. I'm expecting y'all to participate here. So talk a little bit, huh?
Your mind, your mouth.
Mm-hmm. But doesn't prayer also flow out of, it flows out of a relationship?
Right.
But there are people who pray who don't necessarily, we feel, may not even have a relationship. You know, there are many people who go to church that have a form, a ritual, and I'm not saying that all of them don't, but I'm saying I have known of people who've gone to church all their lives and they repeat prayers, but it doesn't come from their hearts. And unfortunately, even in our churches, those of us who've been in a church a long time can lapse into that by rote, that just habit. You know, I have a habit of praying, but there's something missing. There's something that's lost. Something is gone. And if we step back a little bit and evaluate, where am I? What kind of power do I sense in the presence of God when I pray? Do I ever? It's not only on feelings, for sure, but where is that relational aspect in our prayer lives? I'm going to ask you, how many of you have been married?
Yeah.
Are married, been married?
Was.
And you go through this, if you've been married for a while, you get into this habit of being married. You know, work, you've got children, you've got responsibilities, and then you meet up with your husband or wife at the end of the day, and you're talking about the bills that got to be paid, or the roof is leaking, or a problem you're having with your children. And, you know, you think back and you say, you know, there was a time when there was an excitement about being with my spouse. There was a time when I felt some sense of relief when I was in their presence. And if you evaluate your marriage by the state of your communication, what does it say about where you are in that relationship? They have marriage enrichment seminars now. You can go and have marriage counseling. You know, you have date nights. You know, there are things that people begin to do to say, you know what, when my children leave home, I don't want to look at that person across the table from me and say, I don't even know who you are. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that sometimes with the Lord, if we've been in church for a while, we kind of get that way. You know? It's a habit. We get comfortable in our rut.
That's right.
We get really comfortable. And we don't like anyone stirring us out of it. You know, we base whether or not we worship on whether or not we like the music, whether or not the preacher preaches a good sermon, if we're too cold, if we're too hot, if the children are distracting us, if we've got a cold. Now, I'm stepping on my own toes, y'all. I really am. You know, this morning, when the pastor invited us down to the altar, I was kind of like, I like my worship to be private. I'm more private, you know. And I don't really like to get up and go in front of people, because to me it's a private thing. But I'm going to present a challenge because this is something the Lord stepped with me about. We're hearing in a corporate sense, and we're hearing the word. And I don't want this to come across as condemnation. I really don't. I want you to open your heart and say, God, where am I in a rut, and where do I need to be prodded out of my comfort zone a little bit? Okay? So when I came in here and the pastor said, come up here, I was sitting there, I can just kneel down here. My heart's in prayer, Lord. But it was like, no, I want you to come up, and I want you to kneel down, and I want you to consecrate yourself to me. I want you to make that effort, because it's not about what anyone else sees. It's about whether or not you are willing to do that. Right. And I'll just say something else. Miss Weezy, I admire you so much, and I see you struggle sometimes when you get up, and you're struggling with your legs, and it's been a long struggle. And I imagine if the Lord healed you right now, you'd be the first one kneeling down.
Yeah.
Amen. You'd be the first one down. Amen. Sometimes we don't appreciate what we've got until it's gone.
Right. It's true.
We have the freedom and the privilege of worshiping the Lord. We have the freedom to come to an altar.
Yes.
We have the privilege of kneeling, and we have the awesome privilege of being together as a body.
Yes.
And we take that for granted because we still have it. But let illness come and we can't come to church anymore. Let something happen to our freedoms and we don't have the freedom without being willing to risk our lives. And we'll be looking back at these days going, why didn't I take advantage of that when I had it? You know? So there is the aspect of prayer that is so much deeper than just a conversation, but that's the beginning. That is the beginning, a conversation with the Lord. You know, we as humans have a tendency to lapse into legalism. We get our formulas down and we want that formula to work for us every time, and so we just start doing the formula, you know. Well, formulas are important, but we can't lose the heart. So it's pulling that mix together that's very important. So if we look at the kinds of prayer and we look at what prayer is, first of all, there's got to be a personal time of prayer. You know, our corporate prayer is important, but it's an overflow of what's happening in our personal lives. I would say that if the only study of the Word or the only Word you get is what the pastor preaches on Sunday morning, you're at a deficit in your knowledge of the Word. We need to have more than just what the minister ministers to us on Sunday morning. We need to take that Word home and we need to read on it. We need to open our hearts up to what the Lord has to say to us. And if the only prayer you do is while you're here at church, if that's the only discipline of prayer you have, you're sadly lacking in your life. There is a discipline to our spiritual growth. And we are negligent if we do not have a discipline of spiritual growth in our lives. What is your name? Evelyn. Miss Evelyn. I enjoyed your ministry tonight. Brother Clark, you play the guitar beautifully. I'm amazed at the skill. Okay? Did you just get up out of bed one morning and pick up the guitar and go, I'm going to learn how to play. I'm just going to play this guitar. How long did it take you before you really felt like you had an ability to play a song or play with someone singing? Answer. Tell me. How long? Did it just happen overnight, or was it a process of time?
Well, it's been 55 years.
Thank you.
Hard to really answer
Thank
that.
you. That's right. It's a daily, for a while it was almost a daily discipline. It was a picking up the guitar, and I'm gonna discipline myself to do that. I bet your fingers got sore when you first started. Do you remember your fingers getting sore?
Yeah, because my guitar was so terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad guitar that they're playing.
And Mario,
Probably improved the wires
when
over the years.
he received his degree, did he just wake up one morning and think, this is the track I'm gonna walk down there, you know, and they're going to give me that piece of paper. What was the process for him? Can you tell us a little bit about the process Mario had to go through?
Long nights of studying and editing and
Can't hear
asking
you.
for help.
Yeah.
And long nights with the kids, being away from home.
Yeah.
Long nights at work. 'Cause it would be better for him to be at work doing his homework versus coming home.
Yeah. You know, these are earthly endeavors. They're noble earthly endeavors. But how much do we give to our spiritual discipline where we do any more than just what is absolutely necessary? You know, in school, I was going through school, they had a challenge for us, and they said, you need to be planning 2, 5, and 10 years down the road. You need to sit down with your finances, look with your spouse and say, what's it going to look like in 2 years? Savings, when you're going to need a new car, plans for like putting a new roof on the house. If you wait until you need it to do it, what kind of crisis does that precipitate in your life? But we approach our spiritual lives like, well, we'll just go along like normal. And then when a crisis hits, we're going, oh, everyone pray for me. And you feel discouraged and distraught and overwhelmed, when if you're looking ahead in your spiritual walk a little bit and say, God, I need to make a discipline of fasting, a discipline of spending more time with you. I need to memorize your word. I mean, how many of us really discipline ourselves in our spiritual walk? Where these things are part of what we pursue, we actively pursue.